Welcome.
All right. You're
Awesome,
good?
thanks, yeah.
Okay.
You've got
Thank
your
you.
cross and I've got my Star of David.
I've actually got whoops, my star got flipped behind me too. I have my star, and my star actually has, like, a little cross inside of it.
Yeah.
So, I have that, and it kinda goes with my cross and my cross and
Oh,
star tattoo.
nice. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I have a Hamsa on my back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I have like three. I have, well, one from my stripping days. I have like a Pisces right above my butt,
Nice.
two dolphins in a heart shape,
Mhm,
Pisces in the middle, the Pisces sign. I
mhm.
have like two koi fish that are like a Pisces sign also on my neck. And then I got one a couple years ago, a Hamsa that's like colored and it's facing down and it's
Mhm.
got like the third eye in it. The
Oh, okay.
eye, the evil eye in it. So that,
Right.
keep your evil eye away from me.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'll take off I only gave you like an outline, but
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can pretty
Um,
much throw whatever at me.
well, I'm the same way. I'm an open book. I'm like, what do
Yeah.
you know? And first of all, I actually have a very special guest today. Her name is Mindy Kaufman-Opiella. Did I say that right?
Opelia? Close.
Opiella.
Opiella, it's pronounced that way a lot of times too.
Opiella. Okay. Is it
Opelia.
Italian?
It
No.
is actually Polish, believe it or
Polish.
not.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's a Polish name from my husband's side.
Cool. Okay.
So,
So welcome
thank
to
you.
the Jewish stripper. Everybody's like, "Why? Why do you use that?" I'm like, "You know what? Because Raw and Real was taken by 50 million other people."
Sure.
So I said, "Ah, okay, I'm gonna change that." So, yeah, you have a very interesting story. You left home at a very young age,
I did.
became a stripper, dancer, exotic dancer,
Mhm.
and I recall from our conversation before recording
Mhm.
that, you ran away from home when you were 15?
I ran away from home permanently when I was 15, but I had a few practice runs before that, and,
Right.
um, I actually started running away, probably around, 6th grade, around 11. I remember the first time I ran away, I snuck out at about 2 o'clock in the morning and, walked a few blocks over to my best friend's house, and I guess she didn't think I was really gonna go through with it because she'd gone to bed, and, so I knocked on her window, and she said, "I can't open the door because my dad set the alarm, so,
Uh,
um, his car's open, so you can stay in there." So I ended up sleeping in her dad's Gremlin that night.
wow.
It was really cold, and, I ended up walking up the street that morning up to there was a temple by the house that we used to go to. It was actually a pre-K for me, and they had these big, like cement concrete, tubes that were on the playground that the kids used to like to run through, so I kinda hung out in there, and my girlfriend came by with some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and things like that, and I realized I hadn't really thought it through, so I walked home and ended up knocking on the front door, and my mom woke up and, answered the door in her pajamas. They didn't even know I had left the house that night. So,
Wow.
yeah, so that was the very, very first time I ran away, and then after that, it kind of became a habit of I ran away to stay at a boyfriend's house over the summer. I ran away, and my girlfriend and I in ninth grade just decided that we wanted to have an adventure, and we met at school and jumped on a bus and went up to see another friend of ours up in Lauderhill at the time and tried to stay at her place until her mom caught us. And so we ended up, I'll never forget this, we ended up sleeping in a field by by our friend's house.
How
The
old are you at
rain
this point?
Oh, I would have been 14 at that point. We ended up coming back to I was in school and I had called my parents and said if they would just leave us alone, we would go back to school, and it kind of turned into this whole thing. The police were at our school looking for us, and the word kind of got out that we ran away and we might be staying with these guys that we knew. And so one night after we had been gone about 3 or 4 days, the cops showed up at the door, and we ended up getting put in the cop car and brought back to the police station where our
Wow.
parents picked us up. And that kind of became a trend with me until I was 15. And I ended up um, with an older, much older guy that I had met. He was a lifeguard on the beach, and my girlfriend and I had been skipping school one day, and I met him, and we started uh, going out. And I think he was 23, I was 15, and I ended up quitting high school. That would have been 10th grade. So I got through 10th and the first 2 weeks of 11th, and I just decided I couldn't do it anymore.
I
And
I quit school 3 months before graduation.
oh, wow. I think if I had 3 months, I might have stuck it out, but I just couldn't do another 2 years. I really couldn't.
3 months, yeah, but I was always hanging out with older people too,
Hmm.
older guys, and
Yeah. By that time, I was already fully into drinking and liquid lunches and uh, skipping school and hanging out at the back gate and smoking and just pretty much, um, you know, looking for any joy I could find. At the time, I wasn't aware of it. And there was no real talk back then about things like depression and anxiety and mental illness. And kids that were between 11 and 16 were just rebellious, or they were on drugs, or so that was the first
we're
thing my
about the
parents.
same age, I think. We're close.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll be 58 in June, so for me,
6 a Monday.
there we go. So it's the same thing in that generation. They never really
Yeah.
discussed anything. And I had been bounced around from therapist to therapist. We went to, Jewish family services once, and I remember sitting there, and it was almost like I was separated from my family, and it was like everybody was just pointing the finger. I was the black sheep, I was the problem, I was the trouble.
Black sheep here.
Yeah. And I wasn't trying to be a pain in the ass. I really wasn't trying to be um, rebellious in that way. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hateful. I wasn't resentful. I was just bored, and I didn't know that things like ADHD and long term depressive disorder, would trigger a lot.
Or manic depressive.
Exactly, exactly. So while they were shipping me around from therapist to therapist, nobody ever really thought about testing me for anything. It was just all about trying to moderate my behavior and trying to get me to, understand what my place was and what my role was.
Or
There was a place.
compartmentalize you into a box.
Exactly. And I mean, I have a younger sister who's 15 months younger, and there was a lot of it was a very tumultuous relationship in my
Like,
family.
more like, "Why can't you be like your sister?"
Exactly, but I was the older sister, but the
Right.
problem was I was kind of the one that had to break ground for everybody else, for my sister, because I had to really go in. And I went to a tough middle school too. I went to a middle school down here that was, back then there was a lot more racial segregation,
Yeah.
and I went to a school in Dania, middle school in Dania that was pretty heavily, divided in when it came to like Black community, the white community, the Hispanic community. It was everybody kind of hung to themselves, and we all had cliques and things like that. And so even when I wasn't looking for trouble, trouble always seemed to find me. And there were times where I was bullied, I was picked on, And when I went to my parents and kind of told them what was going on, they really couldn't understand. You're 11, 12, 13 years old. 13-year-olds don't do that. Well, they do. And in our school, one of the problems was back in the day, a lot of kids that had graduated from the middle school went up the street to the high school. So you would have people from the high school, the older brothers and sisters coming back, and there were fights and things. Everybody knew, like, the last couple days of school, you always, ducked out because there was usually some sort of ruckus there. Um, but because I never really got that support from my family, uh, I kind of something just switched in my head, and it was more of like, I'm on my own in this. And I had friends that came to bat for me, and those friends became my family, and those friends became more important to me than the people I lived with, because they were the only ones that really had my back. Um, and it was made worse when my sister got there the next year, because as soon as they were ready to, to fall out on her, it was, "Oh, wait, that's Mindy's sister, so, we'll back off." And so that kinda made things a little tougher, because my sister never had to go through what I had to go through. She didn't have that, "You better
You were
fight."
the groundbreaker for her.
Exactly, exactly, which only made things worse, because it just made me look more like I had exaggerated, and I there wasn't as much of a problem as I made it out to be. Um, which again, I don't blame my parents. My father was 46 when he had me, and my mom was 36, which was, very much older in that generation.
Yeah.
Back in that day, most of our friends' parents were, in their maybe 20 or, 25 years older than their kids. My mom was already, 35 years old when she had me, 36 years old. And so I don't think they could really grasp what was going on. And so I never blamed them. I never felt like it was their fault. But I just knew that there was something that was just off, because I was so miserable. I was so unhappy. I was always looking for something to fill that.
Loving in all the wrong places. Yeah.
Not even so much the funny thing is I back in middle and high school, I really didn't do the serious relationship thing, except for
Yeah.
when the guy that I met when I was 15, and that was my first really serious relationship, where I was living with somebody in that context, and it ended up turning into um, a physical abuse, a mental abuse. Apparently, I found out later on down the road, this was kind of a trait with this guy. He liked to have, the younger girlfriend, so that he felt like he could kind of tell me what to do and when to
We
do
have
it.
so much in common in that
Yeah. So I
respect.
was I was at his mercy. And one night I just remember it was the strangest thing. We were watching a movie, and he just flipped out for some strange reason, and we didn't have a fight, nothing happened. He just got up, went into the bedroom, and then walked out the front door. And so I kind of stayed in the apartment, kind of
I wish
wondering.
my ex would have done that.
Oh, but here's the thing, I didn't know what was even going on. I mean, he got up, he got upset, he stomped out. And this is back before we had cell phones. So I didn't have a
Right.
phone. We didn't have a house phone.
Right.
The only way I could communicate with
It's
anybody, my
fine.
parents or anybody else, was a payphone. And I guess he had gone over to the payphone and called my parents and told them to come pick up their effing kike daughter.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. Which again was just news to me, because here I am on the couch just thinking nothing's wrong. And 20 minutes later, there's a knock on the door, and it was my parents. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "Well, this is what he said. He called us and he told us this. What happened?" I said, "I don't have the slightest idea." Within 2 minutes of my parents getting there, the police showed up. Now I'm completely confused. And it turned out that they told me I needed to get my stuff and get out of there, because apparently he had a gun, that I never knew he had,
Oh,
and he was walking around the neighborhood at night and shooting off the gun.
nice.
So I
Yeah.
had about 10 minutes to grab whatever I could and get out of the house. And I did. I moved back in with my parents for a few months at most because it was still, just very contentious. And he was following me around. He was stalking me. I would go to work. The final time I saw him was when I was working at the mall and my dad came to pick me up, and he was walking up at the same time as my father was, and he had a big bouquet of flowers for me. And my dad stopped him. I was not within earshot, but my dad stopped him in his tracks, and I saw the conversation. It was about 30 seconds, and this guy turned around and walked away, and I never heard from him again. So I don't know what my dad said to him. He didn't tell me.
Might have threatened to kill him.
I can think of a few choice things that my dad probably
I'm
said.
jealous. I wish I had that.
So, well,
Mm,
I was a daddy's girl. I will tell
yeah,
you that my one true family relationship, I was very, very much like my father. I think my father also, I unfortunately, he passed at 72. I was 27, so that was a long time ago.
yeah,
But, I never got to ask him, but I do believe that he definitely, suffered from manic depressive disorder, and a few other things. He had a lot of strange behavior towards the end of his life, and so but I was one of 4 daughters he had 2 I have 2 older half sisters that he had with his previous marriage, and, I have nothing in common with anyone in my family except for my dad, really. And, he was the person when I think back to, like, my childhood, he's the one I have the memories of with teaching me how to throw a ball out back and really, like, spending time with them in the pool and at the beach, and so a lot of my childhood memories were with my dad.
which is
And,
wonderful that you have that.
yeah, yeah, very much so, and but I think it was also a major issue between my parents, because I think my dad wanted to give me more leeway than my mom wanted to,
Yeah.
and I think it created a problem for their relationship as well. So, unfortunately, that's the biggest problem I think with mental illness is people either ignore it or they deny it, and
What do you think
it's
is the most common misconception about things like depression, bipolar? What do you think is the most common
that
misconception?
it's obvious, that you can tell that it's so, well, I can tell if somebody is unhappy, and I can tell if this person isn't in their right faculty. But one of the things I think in the last decade or two that we've experienced that should really bring a lot of this to light is how many people have committed suicide that you never in a million years would have, like Robin Williams. I mean, that broke my heart. And
Yeah.
then just recently, I mean, this past week, we lost, Robert Carradine, from the
I didn't
Carradine
know
family.
that.
Yep, he
Didn't
was
hear about that.
71 and he committed suicide. And
Really?
then 2 days later, Martin Short's daughter, who I
Wow.
believe she was only 43, maybe even younger, she committed suicide.
Wow.
And the worst part with her, not only the fact that she was so much younger, but, she was a mental health professional.
Wow.
She helped people with PTSD and
Yeah.
worked with people like that, and,
I
you
thought
know,
Robin Williams had some kind of brain tumor or something.
he had, I don't remember what his illness was. I know that
He
they
had an
said,
illness, though.
yeah, he did have an illness, and I guess,
He didn't wanna
they said that, I mean,
go through
speculation
the
says they made a decision. Yeah, he made a decision. He didn't want his wife to be put through that or his
yeah,
family. At the end of the day, I don't think there's anything harder for people than being left behind by somebody who makes that choice without talking to you, without giving you a chance to help or to change. And I know with me personally, I've had suicidal ideations. I
I
I
tried
had
suicide. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is funny. I mean, the ironic thing is I think if people were really super honest, you would find out that there's more people that have actually thought about that than not, you know? And the only what the advice that I give to people in those situations is I've lived long enough now to understand that what feels absolutely like the worst thing in the world will eventually subside. It goes away.
This too shall pass.
It does.
Yeah.
And at the time that you're in it, you can't see a way out of
Right.
it. But when
Nothing lasts forever.
right. And when you have somebody that understands that and you have
Yeah.
somebody that can relate to that, you realize a lot of times it's just this situation you're in. And in the moment, you're struck with such a sense of hopelessness that you make an impulsive decision, and if you gave it 24 hours or a day or a week and things change, you could say, "Wow, I'm really glad I didn't do that." And so I've
Yeah.
done that. So I think for me, it's more going, yeah, if I had done that like the first time it really entered my mind to do it and I was this close to
Yeah.
doing it, I would have been dead by 19.
I had a little bit of a shock, I think, when, I didn't do my research. This girl from Nigeria last year, was on my podcast, and we just hooked up kind of. Her friend saw one of my podcasts, and, I invite people to be guests all the time. And so we did a men's mental health, and, she was talking about, like, that the percentage of people who commit suicide is more men. It was like 74% of suicides or something crazy like that.
Okay.
But, I didn't try when I was young. I was probably, like, in my 30s,
Mhm.
I just took, like, a bunch of my pills, I figured, and then I didn't wanna wake up, but I did wake up by the
Yeah.
grace of God.
Mhm.
But so, like, everything I've ever tried to I've been not saved, like, as in a Christian way,
Mhm.
but I feel like, um, I've been saved a few times by his magic.
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't until I did accept Jesus Christ and I did get saved in the Christian, definition that I realized even before that, he had been saving me and he had been looking out for me. And the number of times I put myself in a position where I really should have been dead. And he pulled me through it, or he intervened or put somebody, in my life that was, blocking out that, whatever was supposed to happen to me, and it's one of the things that I think I became sort of enlightened about, and it really gave me such a feeling of gratitude to know
Respect
that,
cameras on.
um that he did intervene because he has a higher purpose for me. And I believe that now my function is to live that purpose out. And, between writing the book and talking to people that would never have opened up about certain things that they've gone through or they carry that with them. And I'll run into people all the time that I see that only know me through Facebook or social media, and they'll tell me like, "I read your book and it's
And I'm
it's
sorry I haven't read it before our interview. I will read it, though.
yes, it's I think you'll find that it's very much aligned with some of the stuff that you've been through as well. So,
So I had a question for you.
yeah,
I need my glasses to see
sure.
writing. So, yeah, you wrote a book about your journey,
Mhm.
and you traveled a lot when you ran away from home. And, well, we have that commonality that we're both
Mhm.
former strippers.
Mhm.
That's kind of why, John Curran pointed me towards you. And I was like, and he said, but he called you Mindy Kaufman.
Right.
And I said, oh, she's also Jewish. And he's
Mhm.
like, well, not all strippers are Jewish. I'm like, yeah, I, I'm aware.
I happen to know a few more.
I do. I worked in a club. I told
Mhm.
John, when I worked in a club here in Maryland where I live, that there was a club where at one point the owner was Jewish, his wife was a stripper there. Her mother came with outfits for the girls. So it was just a family affair.
So she was like the house mom.
She was like the house mom,
That's cool. That's
and his wife was over there doing, lap dances. He's like, he didn't care. So
yeah.
think I wanted to, you know, get a little bit about your story as far as like, I have a background where I was in an abusive marriage.
Mhm.
I was, like obsessed with this man, and I actually got into stripping because he was into strippers.
Oh,
But I thought he I was like
gotcha.
23 years old, so
Right.
21, 22, 23. So
Mhm.
I wanted to be like whatever, he
You
wanted.
wanted.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he
Mhm.
kind of groomed me into becoming, made it look like it was my idea to go audition.
Right.
So how did you get into that? Yeah, because I mean, I know you wrote a book about, and it's probably all in your book, but
It's yeah, the entire obviously the entire story, there was a lot that I really wanted to get into that book without making it, this
about
big.
the stripping.
Right, and to kind of touch on everything so that people kind of knew the beginning and how that transpired. But the interesting thing is once I got out of the relationship where I was with the guy that the police came and said you got to go, and we moved past that situation. I was at home. I had quit school, so I was working full time in retail, and things at home were just again just getting worse and worse and worse. And by the time I was 16, I was living with a friend of mine. I was living with my girlfriend and her parents. Her parents took me in, and my parents at that point were just ready to wash their hands of the situation, which, I don't blame them. I mean, I just did not want to be there and they got tired of trying to schlep me back over and over. So they agreed to let me stay there. And I would take the bus. I didn't have a car, so I would take the bus to and from my job in retail every day. And I paid them a little bit every month, just, for
Mhm.
rent sort of thing. And we ended up there was a neighbor that had lived across the street from her years and years ago, and she came back in town, and at that point now, she was doing runway modeling, and she was getting ready to leave to go to LA, and I was dying to get out of Florida. I just wanted as far away from everybody and everything, so I was ready to say, "Let's go." So she said, "The game plan is I have a runway show to do at I think is the Dallas Dakota Center, and I'll be there for a week." And she said, I can't get my plane ticket now." She said, "But if you get me the ticket after I'm done, I'm gonna cash my check and I'll pay you. And then from there we'll go to LA." So I was like, "Okay, that's great." So, real long story short was we got out there. The day that we got out there, what she hadn't told me was that she had planned to stay with friends, but those friends didn't know she was coming and they were out of the country. So we arrive in Dallas with nowhere to
Wait,
stay.
that was LA and Dallas.
And well, no, this is from Florida to Dallas. Like I
Okay.
was doing Florida to Dallas, Dallas to
LA.
LA.
Okay.
And at the time, I had enough money to get us to the to one night of a hotel room. So we stayed over by the airport. I called a friend of mine back in Florida that I knew. had friends in Dallas, and I said, "Hey, this is our situation. So, can you help us out?" So he put us in contact with a friend of his who was a DJ at one of the clubs. And uh, he came over to the hotel and he said, "Look, I got to drop you off at a friend's house because I work the night shift. I just got done with work. I got to go home and get some sleep before the next shift." So we met this other guy who was a DJ at another local club and ended up kind of hanging out with him for the day. And he said, "I'll take you guys to lunch. I got to go by the club first." So we went to the club, and the girl that I was with was very put out and bent out of shape, because I guess she just felt like being in a strip club was just not her thing. Um, In the meantime, this guy is nice enough to allow us to crash on his couch for, like, the week and drive her back and forth to Dakota Center for the week after coming home from his shift at 2:30 in the morning. So, this was somebody who was kind enough to put themselves out in the first place, and at the end of the week, we had gone to the club with him a couple times, and then she pulled me aside and said, "I'm not going back to a strip club." So I said, "All right, well, I don't wanna sit around this apartment all day long." So I ran around and I went back with them, and I guess she got a little bent out of shape because at the end of the week, she just up and grabbed a cab and left me stuck in
Fine
Dallas
drive.
with no money and no refund for the airplane ticket that I just purchased for her. And now I have this decision. What do I do? Do I go back to Florida? I can't go out to California because I don't have any money to get out there. And the guy that we were staying with said, "Hey, look, if you want, I can get you a job at the club, working the door, taking money." And I said, I think I want to try that because when we went in there, the first
Much
thing that blew
money
me
they were
away was
making.
the girls were gorgeous. It was only topless in Dallas. In
Mm.
Dallas, you had to wear a T-back. So
Mm.
basically, I was already one of those girls that laid out on the beach topless and did all of the bikini contests I used to sneak into during spring break, and
Ah,
so that I was very, very body confident.
yeah.
So I didn't have an issue with that. And so he said, "Well, if that's the case, then let's go out tonight. I'll introduce you to some of the top girls at the club, and they'll kind of show you the ropes." And that's exactly what ended up happening. Is I was the youngest one there at the time. I was 17, and at 17 in Dallas, you're considered emancipated. So
Ah,
my parents didn't. There was nothing they could do. I mean, basically, they had to
yeah.
either they couldn't make me come home. So, of course, I lied, and I told them that I was working at a law firm or something. I think Dallas was big at the time, so I told them it was like JR Law Firm or something really ridiculous
My
to,
mom
like, off
used to
my
watch
head as a
that. That was
kid.
her thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and I ended up, working there for about 3 years. The my real big issue that I had while I was there was I had tried doing cocaine, when I was 13 in 8th
Uh,
grade. And as much as I liked it, it wasn't around a whole lot at the time in Florida, especially at that age. People were smoking pot and things like that. But when I got to Dallas, it was everywhere. And
oh
so
my god.
that
My
became
high
my drug
school,
of choice.
everybody was doing it.
Oh,
It
I
was
didn't know
amazing that I
anyone.
didn't get into it in high school.
I didn't know anyone doing cocaine back then. And the first time I did it, it was with one of my very best friends. After we hitchhiked with some rando stranger back to his place. So I've been in these situations where I just go, "Oh God, I am only here by the grace of God," because there's
Yeah.
so many situations I put myself in.
Yeah. Me too.
But the funniest thing that I love to tell people when it comes to that industry, and again, I don't know. I did not dance down here in Florida. I only have Dallas to use as my personal reference. But in my situation, nobody held the gun to my head. I wasn't trafficked. I wasn't, exploited, as people like to say. I kind of felt like what the girls taught me gave me a real sense of empowerment. one of the first week that I was there, one of the girls, who had been doing this for a long time, she was actually, rated the number 1 dancer in Dallas Magazine that year at the time,
Wow.
and she said to me she watched me on stage a couple of days, and then she said, "You need to start making eye contact." And
Mhm.
honest to God, of all of the things that I learned and all of the advice I had gotten from all of these older girls that were like sisters to me, that was probably the one thing that stuck out the most because once you made that eye contact, you were in control. And
It's a lot of power in that.
it really is. And I would watch a couple of the more experienced girls, literally have a guy's face, like, right here by their boobs or right by the crotch, and those guys aren't looking anywhere except for at their eyes because they just or they look away. So, I found it to be extremely empowering and extremely, um, you know, feminine.
Doesn't sound like you had a bad experience.
My only bad experience,
Yeah.
like I said, was the drugs. I really, and a lot of the girls did try to kinda get me back on the rails, but I was just hell bent to go off the rails completely,
Yeah.
and it cost me a couple of roommates, and it cost me some friends at the time, but one thing I can tell you is, oh my god, what, 35 years later, I'm still in touch with those girls. They're still like sisters to me. I love them.
I'm lucky that way. I don't have that.
We had a reunion about 10 years ago, and I'm telling you, it was the most incredible homecoming for me because I had seen these girls that I was a baby when I knew them. I was
Yeah.
17,
Yeah.
and now I'm in my 40s, and you know, we all had our own challenges in life to deal with. Some of our group is gone. We lost one
Um,
person to suicide. We lost another person to pancreatic cancer. So we've lost some of our girls, but it's definitely a time in my life that molded me into who I am now, for
that's what I
good
was
or for
gonna
bad.
say. I was gonna ask you, how did the stripping industry affect you as a person? How did it change
Um,
you? For me, the way I look at, you know, human nature, I
mhm.
feel like I learned so much about human nature in both men and women in the strip club, in the stripping industry.
Um, I don't know that I really like I learned so I mean, there were a lot of eye-opening experiences, but I don't think there's nothing that pops out that was particularly I did have one particular situation that still haunts me to this day. And I've mentioned it in my book, but I cannot and I will not go into detail about the who, but
It's anonymous.
it
Yeah.
was an anonymous rock star that came in and, ended up, long story short, spiking my drink, and I ended up, back at a hotel with 2 members of the band and, basically was sexually assaulted. Um, the irony of it was this was not a person that would have ever had to have drugged anybody to get a girl to
Right.
go with them. But the reason it happened to me was because at the time I used to dance to that band's music and I refused to dance to anybody's music that was in the club. I didn't want to look like I
You
was
were
sucking
trying to kiss
up
their
or I
ass.
was trying to, exactly. And
Yeah.
so I had asked the DJ specifically to change my regular song that I would have done for my second shift, my second set, and right before I was supposed to go up, he handed me a drink and I said, "I just had one." He said, "No, this is a special one." I don't know what that meant. At the time, I really didn't think about it because
Yeah.
went to go up on my set, and as I'm walking over there, I hear the DJ. My stage name was Brandy. I hear the DJ say, "Brandy, please don't kill me. You're gonna thank me for this later." And then the song came on, and I don't remember getting off the stage. I don't remember my second set. I remember vaguely being escorted out by the band on each side trying to get me past the police officers because number 1, I was underage to drink, and 2, I was obviously, like, off my gourd. So I remember vaguely being put into a limo with the band members, and from there, I just remember waking up in a bed, uh, with
Feeling like you'd been
Yep. So that really, I think, was the only kind of shocking thing that happened that I was like, "Really?" The rest of it, obviously, as I'm sure you've had happen, people are gonna proposition you, people are gonna offer you X, Y, and Z. I did have a situation where we had 3 gentlemen that used to come into the club regularly that were very, very big spenders. They had the regular girls that they like, and I happened to be part of that club. They were very, very much into brunettes because we had a lot of blondes.
yeah, of
And
course.
and they always took the girls to dinner. We would always go out as a group. There was never any one-on-one. These guys were all married. They all had families, and
They just
and
wanted a distraction.
they just wanted a distraction. And like I said, there was never a time that any girl was ever disrespected, any of the dancers was ever disrespected by these 3 men, but I was disrespected by one of their sons, and that was somebody who came in feeling entitled and, propositioned me and my roommate, and I said no, and she got mad, and so it created a very, very, big problem
Yeah.
between the 2 of us and ended up ending our, roommate decision, because I said, "No, I'm not gonna sorry,
I,
that's."
sorry to cut you off. No,
Oh, that's okay.
I had, I never had taken out to dinner, that situations and all that stuff. But there was a time where I worked in Connecticut and this club would have porn stars, touring,
Oh, yeah.
basically like the
Mhm.
main feature
Right,
sometimes. And always like the manager was their husband. And it was very
right.
similar to my situation because my ex-husband
Mhm,
was, taking all my money and I was willing to give it to him. And he was doing a lot of drugs. And, I started getting more and more into coke with him.
mhm.
And I was propositioned by the porn stars. And
Wow.
and I was not into girls.
Right,
Never
right.
been.
Nope.
Not it just wasn't my thing.
Right.
Um, I there was, like, a couple instances where I I tried it and it wasn't for me,
Mhm.
but my ex was kept
Right.
pushing that, and I
Mhm.
whatever I if I did that, I did that for him, and so
Right,
it didn't feel natural because it was like, almost like, you want me to perform for you.
right.
So,
Well, yeah, it definitely sounds like he was the controlling factor there.
yeah, he was, but eventually I left him. But
Mhm,
it's just funny, like the title of my book is The Life of a Jewish Stripper, but it's not just about stripping. It's about, I haven't published it.
mhm,
I haven't finished it, but, it's about my experience before, from the time that I was a kid and all the stuff that I went
mhm,
through, and, I was joking that I could have with the bands and stuff and the, famous people coming
mhm.
through, um, I had, like, rappers propositioning me to be in their videos,
Yeah.
and so I was gonna name the book, like, I could have been a video hoe.
I like
So,
that. I kinda like that.
maybe that'll be, like, after I do the first
2.
one.
Sure.
Yeah, it coulda, but I wouldn't wanna name a podcast. I could have been a video host. So, but that I mean, I think that in my perspective, I personally think that when people are in that concentrated, um, area of, where there's, beautiful women, and there is the, you're lucky that, when you if and I was lucky to also be have friends. I still have friends that I talk to.
Mhm.
One of my best friends that still moved to Connecticut, actually.
Oh, okay.
She ended up, like, really loving Connecticut,
Mhm.
and I talk to her occasionally, but she's got a very busy life. But, she made a lot of money, and so I kinda got swept up with her, and she was doing a lot of coke, and so I ended up that was after I left my ex, actually,
Okay.
and I felt more
Mhm.
empowered because I left him, so I took my power back, and
Right.
at the same time, I felt like when I was with him, I wasn't, like, really living my
Right.
life, and
Mhm.
then I thought when I was doing the drugs a lot, I was like, "Oh, this is living. This is how." I thought it was this wonderful, I can live for myself now.
Sure.
But I think that in a area where they're the constant concentration of, the sex, and I think that a person's personality is amplified, whether it's male or female. And
Sure.
so if you're a nice, good person, good-hearted person, that comes through. And if someone is an ass, I'll just say
Right.
ass. I could say asshole, it's my podcast, whatever.
It's your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
That's true. That's
I
very true.
I think that if you're an asshole, you're gonna be even more. You're gonna that that part of your personality will come through.
Comes out. Right.
Yeah, everything comes out in the laundry.
Right.
A strip
Yeah, I
club.
mean, I think the interesting thing too is when for where I was, the average age of the girls were like the early 20s. But 22, 23.
Mhm.
Uh and we had our club was more of like a rock and roll club. But there was a club down the street that was a very, very high end. It was called $1 Million Saloon.
Yeah,
But the club that I was at had the same category of girls, beautiful girls. But one of the things I was so impressed with was every girl had her own style. Back then, at least where I was dancing, I've noticed down here a lot of the girls, they all wear the same shoes and the same, long dress, and they just kind of walk around the pole and it's more of a sensual thing. But the girls that I worked with had very unique styles. We had girls that were professional dancers that danced ballet, and we
yeah,
had girls that were Broadway girls and did some amazing acts with either acrobatics or using a chair. So,
yeah.
I always felt like there was an art to it.
It is
You
an
can't.
art.
And for me, I always loved to dance,
Yeah, me
but
too.
I didn't realize how different dancing is from working a stage.
Right.
When you're dancing in a club, you're just standing there dancing. You don't have to work a whole stage. And I had never really worked a stage where you're going down and taking tips and things. And the girls were showing me certain techniques, like always put your hand, right in front of your hip when you're pulling, so they don't try to slide the money down into your, hoo
Yeah,
ha. So things like that, always turn your back and do it from the back. But there were a lot of things that I learned. It's almost like learning poise and learning this and learning that. If you're you're a runway model, you've got to learn how to walk the stage. You've got to learn
yeah.
how to work in these shoes. I mean, I remember for the first 6 months, I was in tears because I was literally breaking my arches in, and all of the little bones in my feet had to adapt to this
When
new.
I started, it was when we were wearing the pumps. That was before
That same
platforms
thing.
became
Yep.
popular,
Right.
pointy high heel.
And your foot was like this in
And so your foot was, I mean, I would get
Mhm.
the calluses and they actually helped on the pole more than the platform should because it's really, really hard because they kind of like help your foot hang on. But anyway, it's the
I always did the pumps thing.
yeah,
I also had a pair of the thigh high boots that I absolutely loved, and I
yeah,
was for the rock and roller. So for
right.
me,
I never had
um,
the thigh high.
yeah, it was just breaking in. I went from like, like the kitten heel, and then by the
Yeah,
time I was done, I was in like 8-inch stilettos, and they were metal
yeah.
heels that you were like the size of a pinhead.
I'll make this like for nope, the kids cannot watch this particular episode.
Right.
It's explicit.
Definitely.
We'll put it as explicit because I worked in DC in this area in DC and Baltimore. It's a lot of it's completely naked in certain
Mhm.
clubs, and
Right.
guys would come up to the stage just to see what's between your legs.
Sure.
You were,
Sure.
would
Absolutely.
joke that we were bending over for dollars.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Now that's the thing. I mean, like, people have asked me, "Well, would you ever dance down here?" And my I had 2 answers to that. Number 1, no, because I knew too many people down here, but number 2, also because it was all nude, and I was never comfortable with that. Running around the beach in a thong bikini with no top on was a no-brainer for me. I didn't look at it as, like, I'm exposed, or, it wasn't something that bothered me, and then the same thing with the bikini contests. I used to do those there was places down here at the beach back in the spring break age with the candy store and summers on the beach, and there were clubs that always hosted these bikini contests or wet t-shirt contests for spring break.
Mhm.
So I would always be sneaking into the clubs and entering the contests. And when I came home and I was in my 20s, and working at a bar, bartending, I was still doing the bikini contests at a place called Bootleggers, which is on the Fort Lauderdale Intercoastal. And it's been in a lot of the spring break movies and things like that. But they always had a Sunday competition. So I would work on Saturday and Sunday, and then I go over and I do the bikini
Your
contest.
husband was from this area, so he probably knows Ocean City, Maryland, which
Oh, yeah.
in the summer, they will have bikini contests.
Sure.
So my girlfriend talked me into one of them. We were the only ones in thongs. So because
Huh.
we were just, running around.
Yeah.
We didn't care who knew us or who we
Right.
knew her. It was,
Right.
it was
I think
great.
it's funny because I actually did have 2 of my guy friends from down here. The one that actually got me hooked up in Dallas with his friends, they came out to Dallas, and they were like brothers to me, and I said, "You're not coming in the club while I'm working." And they were
Yeah.
like, "Ah, yeah, we're gonna find a way to get," and sure enough, if they didn't walk in, like, the night I was on main
Yeah.
stage, and it was just
My
like,
ex-husband used to drag his friends into the club to look at me dancing. I'm like, I don't want to dance in front of your friend. That's,
right?
bend over or show my, excuse me, pussy in front,
Right.
and to
Yeah,
your friends.
yeah,
And so
exactly.
it was really crazy.
Yeah, it's a different story when it's, like, your own backyard, and
Yeah.
people that are still, I mean, there were all it was funny because when I left home, there were all kinds of rumors. I would talk to some of my friends. One of my friends found out where I was. I think my parents might have given him my phone number. It was when I would first gotten there, and one of my first roommates, and he called me up and he said, "Oh, I heard you're, like, a dancer now." And I'm like, "Where did you hear that?" Like, even my parents
Yeah.
didn't know. So I'm like, I have no idea how he heard, but somehow he found out. Of course, I denied it at the time until
That was
later
one of the
on.
reasons that I've just came when I went to start the podcast, and at first it was raw and real,
Mhm,
and I knew that, there's that a lot of people that I work with now in my regular 9 to 5 job,
mhm.
know my ex-husband, and, I don't know. I just said, I'm gonna own it. I'm going to
Sure.
I started my company called the Jewish Stripper LLC, and,
Mhm.
I just decided instead of somebody coming and saying, "Oh, I found out, I
Right.
heard this through the
Mhm.
grapevine." I said, "You know what? Everybody that I've worked with or known my whole life or whatever, I'm just gonna own it. And then
Yeah, I mean
I'm going to make it a brand.
right.
It's
Uh-huh.
going to be a comment on one of my videos about this was I've been doing it since like August of 24, and
Mhm.
somebody went on, made a comment, said, "There's no strippers. There's no strippers. It's boring. No strippers." So I went the next week, I did an episode. I said, "Okay, I'm gonna tell you all about my experience, all about stripping.
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you all about my stripping experience. You said there were no strippers, but well, I am kind of an ex-stripper, so I'll tell you all
Yeah.
about that episode
And
got like 7,000 hits or something crazy.
yeah, I think the most interesting thing about that, I've always had people say, well, if you could go back and do it differently. And, that's it's kind of a double-edged question
Yeah.
because if you say, "Yeah, I would," then you're kinda saying you're ashamed of what you did, and if you say, I
Right.
wouldn't." So, for me, my whole reason is, look, I like who I am today. I wouldn't be who I am today to help other people if it wasn't for what I had been through,
I have nothing
and
to be ashamed of.
well, and I one of the things about the book I had that was the most challenging for me to write is like you said, it wasn't just one thing. It was basically all or none. And again, this was something that God had put on my heart to do. And it was emptying out my closet. And my only concern really, because knowing who I am now, I don't, if you know me, you know me. If you don't know me and you want to judge me by what I did or what's in my book, then by all
Right.
means feel free.
And that
But I
I've
was
had
most
actually someone say, aren't you helping broken people?" Or somebody said, "Why do you use the Jewish stripper logo?" Like I have a
mhm,
background where I have my logo
mhm,
and it's a dancer, it's a stripper.
mhm,
And you can look it up on my website.
yeah,
And so it's just I said, "Well, why do you assume that just because someone is a stripper that they're either broken, they need help?" Because I worked with women, like I told you, in my podcast, I've said several times, I worked with women who were studying for a PhD,
uh-huh,
medical degree, law
mhm,
degree, social worker.
yeah.
I mean, you name it, I've seen it. It's not,
Well, you
and
mentioned being
so I was
broken.
like, maybe, maybe someone is broken. Why do you assume
Right,
that
right,
someone is broken because they decided to be a
right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I was broken long before I ever made that decision.
thank you.
So that wasn't a decision I made because I was broken or wasn't. That is a decision I made because I saw something that was easy gain, easy profit. And like I said, when I met the girls and I found out that everything was like legit and on the up and up, and I wasn't expected to, perform sexual acts for anybody or do that stuff,
That's
it
the
was
other
like,
thing.
what's the big deal? Because
Right,
I'm doing this on the beach for free, and now somebody wants to give me money for it. And the
right,
customers, I mean, we had some of the best regulars. I mean, we
right,
had regulars that were very protective of the girls.
right.
We had regulars that always made sure that every girl just had their one guy that was like, "That's my
Yeah,
girl," and
or that,
I had
yeah,
my regular that would
right.
never tip me on front stage. Every time I went to the backstage on the second stage that we had, he would just come up. He always stood at the pool table shooting pool. He'd come up, give me $100 and walk away. The
Nice.
first day he did that, I went to go talk to him and he said, "Look, I know how this works. You don't need to schmooze me when I'm here."
Right. I
You know
like you.
and exactly. And so you get to know when you're talking about human nature, you do get to know people and you do get to see some of the quirky things
Well,
that
there's good, not just bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the bad for me really was I mean, I think if I have any regrets, it's just how much money I just wasted or lost or
Right,
didn't
I always
make
regret
because
how
of
much
the
money I gave my
drugs.
ex-husband for drugs and
Yeah,
drinking whatever. But
exactly. I
my
mean,
only
for
regret
me, it was the
was
drugs.
that I, didn't leave earlier and take my money with me.
Right, right, and I think that's
I think
probably
the camaraderie, that's what you're talking about, the
mhm,
camaraderie with the other women. I think a lot of misconception is that even though, of course, there's competition, but a lot of misconception is that, we all wanna scratch each other's eyes out, that
right,
we're that,
right,
and I said in my book that don't assume that all strippers are whores or gold diggers.
right.
And I
You know,
and I and
I used
I said, "Honestly, are there people that have sex for money? Yes.
sure,
Yes.
sure.
But it's not my job to judge them and how they make their money."
Sure, and we actually the within I think within the first 6 months I was there, maybe even less than that, because it was we had a dressing room when I first started there, and then they built us a whole brand new one, but it was in the old dressing room, so it had to be pretty much when I had first started where there was a girl that was coming in, and she was going out into the parking lot with customers, and when the girls found out, they ran her right out of the club because they said, "You
Right.
are not gonna come in here and
Sound
make us look like whores or"
your sound is, like, messed up a little.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, I've got yours is going in and out too.
yeah, yours was, like, vibrating, so we'll just cut it out later.
Okay. Can
Okay.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a
Well, I think
vibration.
the most interesting thing was, I had a friend of mine when I came back, and I had some friends of mine who girlfriends that got all upset because their their husbands were or boyfriends were going to, a bachelor party at a strip club. I would laugh, and I used to tell them, I said, "Look, be glad he's going to a strip club and
Right.
not to
A
club
hooker.
so and so
Right.
and all these clubs," because
Right.
those girls not a single one of those girls is interested in going home with your man. They wanna make their money, they wanna go home.
Right.
And I used to tell people the safest place and I'm again, I don't know what that experience is like for other people. I just wanna use that as my disclaimer. Maybe down here it's different or maybe, in other states, but in my situation, the guys had a better chance of, finding an Easter egg than they did getting one of the girls to go home with
Huh.
them because, we were there to work and to make money. Afterwards, a lot of us usually hung out together. We usually spent time, with the same crew. Like I said, my biggest problem was the drugs because
Yeah, me too.
cocaine was my drug of choice,
Yeah.
which my psychiatrist years and years and years later said to me, with your condition, that doesn't surprise me
Right.
because you have, something that the way your brain works on cocaine is like the way ADHD people have with, Ritalin or Adderall. It works on your brain in such a way that it would actually enlighten everything for me. And I think for me, I was really just trying to escape the pain and escape
Yeah.
how crappy I felt all the
Right.
time with no explanation why. I just didn't know why I couldn't be happy. And I would be up 3, 4, 5 days at a time with, not eating and just, my face hurt and I was sick a lot because I just
I
got
would lay in bed
run
and
down.
my heart was pumping so fast. I'd come home and I'm trying to sleep, but my heart wouldn't let me sleep
Oh,
because
yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
just laying in bed shaking, and I'm
And
like,
that's when I had my stash of NyQuil. I don't know about you,
"Nah,
but I used to
didn't
have a
know about
big,
that."
economy bottle of NyQuil,
Wow.
and I would just chug that down to knock me out. I mean, it was a mess. It
I
really
would just
was.
wait till it passed and I could sleep, and
Oh,
or
I
read a
could never
book,
do
or
that.
I would read a book, and then I'd have mental craziness from because I was reading, like, a lot of Anne Rice and Vampire,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, you know, my life almost felt like I was a vampire
Yeah.
because
Oh,
because
yeah.
I was, sleeping during the day and up all
Mhm.
night, and
Yep.
I'd be like, maybe a vampire can come make me a vampire.
There, let me tell you, I didn't
Crazy,
realize
crazy thoughts.
I didn't realize how much that affected me until much later when I was coming home. I was already living here at home, and I would bartend until 4 AM, and then between cleanup and close out and getting home, I remember racing home to beat the sunrise and having flashbacks of what that felt like in
Yeah,
Dallas. Like, when the sun was up, it was just
right.
like,
Oh God. Oh
"Heck
my.
no." I know. So, we always had houses that somebody, we'd go hang out at somebody's place and they'd close all the blinds up and
Right.
everything would be dark and,
Yeah.
it
I would go to, like, after hours clubs, and at one point I was hanging out. My best friend and I at the time were hanging out in the Bronx. She met a guy. We met some guys, and she fell in love with this guy in the Bronx, and she moved to the Bronx, even though I was going to move to New York, and she moved before me, and she was telling me, please don't move without me. And then she moved before me. And 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 so anyway, like, we don't really talk that much anymore. But she uh we would be leaving the after hours at 6 o'clock in the morning, and like, the sun is in your face.
Yep,
You're like, "Oh,
yep.
I feel like a vampire." But I want.
Yeah, no, I was actually doing that down here at 15, 16,
Wow.
because we had a club back in the day in Hallandale. We had two Hallandale was one of the only cities that had a 6 AM liquor license.
Oh.
And so there was a club, called the Button South, and the Button South was one of those places that was just always 80s rock. They always had live bands, and we had a friend of ours, who would, keep the pens, all the different colored ink pens in his car because he was an artist. So one person would get stamped and then he would come out and draw that stamp on everybody's wrist
Ah,
so they didn't ask us for ID and it looked like we'd already been in the club. As
hilarious.
long as you went late enough, you were kind of filtered in through the door with everyone else.
Yeah.
And oh my God, at 16 we were drinking until the sun
Yeah.
came up, you
Yeah,
know.
I was, like, always around older people, so I got a fake ID, and
Mhm.
I was, hanging out in DC in Georgetown with, my older friends,
Mhm.
and then I, got in trouble because I took my friends from high school and, to get the fake IDs, and then their parents found out, and I was, as always, the black sheep of the family, and now I was the black sheep of my friends.
Families, yeah.
Right. So,
You were the bad influence.
yeah, I mean, and I was an only child, so when there was negative stuff, that was the way that I would get attention. That's the
Mhm.
only way I knew how to get attention, was to do negative things. And then, but there was no one else to blame.
Right.
I do have a half brother and half sister on my father's side.
Mm,
I'm from Russia, so he had been with a woman in Russia, and then he married a Russian woman. So we have a half brother, and we have a half sister. But my family, I was the only child, so everything, if something bad happened, it was me.
right.
But I.
Well, even in a household, even in a household with a sibling, I was that was me too. If it was bad, it was me.
Yeah.
I was always in trouble for something.
But I wanted to ask you, I think you had a much more positive experience. For me, when I was dancing, especially when I was with my ex, I was hating my life. But I didn't hate the club. I didn't hate my friends at the club. I didn't hate the dancing, and
No, with the control of the ex
it was
was
just the control. So you had, a more positive experience, and you still have those connections, and
yes.
I have, like, a lot of disconnect with a lot of people. But, what I wanted to kinda ask you is so your story is so interesting because you were born into a Jewish family,
Mhm.
and so,
Was.
you know, but you are a person of a Christian faith now, and you still, um, you are, I guess, how can I put it? You respect your Jewish roots.
There actually is a term for it, and the strange thing is, I have actually learned more that the ironic thing is I've actually learned more about Judaism since becoming it's called a Messianic Jew.
Yeah.
And they actually have temples. We went to one for a while where they incorporate all of the stuff from like the traditional Friday night you would go and they would do the blessing over the wine and the blessing over the
Mhm.
bread and everything's done in Hebrew and they have the bima and they take out the Torah, but there is a whole respect and there is a whole teaching on Yeshua, which is the Hebrew name for Jesus,
Mhm.
and they incorporate the New Testament. So the Bible is the Bible. It's not Old Testament and New Testament. It's one book. It's beginning to end from, the start of life to what is considered the end of life and how everything is wrapped up. But it wasn't until I was oh my gosh, in my what I met my husband, my la la la. We got married in 2013. That's a little bit of math for me, but
Oh,
2014.
congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. So 2014 is actually when I became what I consider born again, and I accepted Jesus, and I had a baptism. That wasn't just an instantaneous decision. We had started going to church. The funny thing is before I even met my husband, I had gone looking for God. I knew
Yeah.
I was a single mom. I had a very, very, abusive relationship with my son's biological father.
Mhm.
Um, it was physically abusive, it was contentious, he was always trying to manipulate me. He was like the poster child for narcissism,
Yeah.
and,
My exes too, the epitome.
yeah.
I call them the epitome.
Yeah. So, getting myself out of that situation, I was working 3 jobs when my son was born.
Wow.
This man was still in my life. He had sued me for custody of my child because I filed a restraining order on him after he threw me into a wall when I was 7 months pregnant with my child.
Wow.
And, the day that I filed a restraining order, he met my attorney with an attorney, and they sued me for custody, saying
Wow.
that I was mentally unfit and I took antidepressants and I was not fit to be a mother and I would have all these fits of anger and it was
Oh.
a really really dark time for me because I was trying to be a first-time mom. I was trying to deal with this man who is making my life miserable. I told him he could be in his son's life. I just didn't want a relationship with him anymore, and that was not acceptable. My mom was not making things easy for me. I had stayed with her for probably about a year and a half before I got my own apartment. And at that point, I was offered a job when my son was about 4 years old. I was offered a job. I had been working as a promotion model for a company out of New York, and at the same time, I was also bartending at 2 or 3 different places, so I was all over the place. And, when I took this job, this promotions job, little did I know it was gonna end up being my saving grace, because I ended up being able to work from home. I ended up working on a salary, so I didn't have to worry about tips and that sort of lifestyle being
Mhm.
gone every weekend. It did require travel, but it was a wonderful one. I mean, I finally felt like I found my niche, and I loved it, and it was I can honestly say with everything I've ever done, I mean, I have had more jobs and worn more hats and done more
Me too.
things than I can even imagine, but this was kind of like I've grown up and here's my real job, and now I have an adult job, and, I met my husband, and we had gotten engaged and planned to get married, March of 2013, and in November of 2012, I got an email from my company saying that they have made a tough decision to close my department. And so I was out of a job that I had had for 9 years and that I just loved and was so good at and so much a part of me. It was like losing part of myself. And my husband, who was my fiance at the time, walked in the door and my jaw was on the floor. And he was like, "What's wrong?" And I said, I think I just lost my job." And
Mm.
he said, "What, they fired you?" And I said, "No, they just closed my company." So I went from, okay, great. But in the interim between meeting my husband and raising my son for 11 years, something felt like it was missing. And I said, I bought my home. I bought us a 3-bedroom townhouse. I didn't need anybody to help me with it. I didn't need a co-signer. I didn't need anything. I just busted my butt and saved up. And I was
Yeah.
so proud of being able to do that because I wanted my son to have a stable household. And I still felt something was missing. And the only experience I had was Temple. And so I went back to Temple, the temple that I had grown up in, and oddly enough, the rabbi and the cantor were still the same rabbi and cantor from when I was 13, 12.
Wow.
And so I thought, wow, how great is this? This is going to be like the part that's
Coming
missing.
home. It's like a coming home. Yeah.
Exactly. It at first it felt like that was what it was going to be, and
It's
it just turned into a nightmare.
vibrating a little bit again.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
yeah, I came back and I did 2 years there, and the last day that I was there, I'll never forget it because it was Yom Kippur, and I had I had a lot of rude awakenings when I went back, just from the financial perspective of
Very
what was
snobby,
expected.
fun people, very
It
snobby.
wasn't even, well, here's the thing. I was a single mom,
Yeah.
and I was not very welcomed by the women at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Women did not like me. The couple of times I tried to join things or involve my son in things, there he had one play date the whole time, and it was more the fact that I was unaware of, like, I had to I had to pay a membership fee. Membership fee. When you're going as a kid, you don't really realize what your parents
Right.
do or don't do, or but it's the same thing with church. You don't know what your parents are giving or tithing,
Right.
or so I didn't really know what to expect, but I was kind of taken aback by the fact that I was asked to show some financial records to show them what my income was so that they could determine what my
The
membership fee.
sliding scale thing.
Right, to do the sliding scale.
Yeah.
And then that kind of rolled into, like, I wanted to put my son in summer camp. Well, we don't do discounts for summer camp, even if you're a member. And what they wanted was just so ridiculous. I said, I'm a single parent.
Yeah.
I can't afford this. So sitting there on New Year's Eve.
Wasn't very spiritually.
Well, that was the other
Well,
problem. We would go
yeah.
every Friday. We would go on Friday nights, and no one's there on Friday nights. Maybe a handful of people. Most people, just like a lot of times with the Christian non-denomination or Catholic, they'll go on Easter and they'll go on Christmas. Well, a lot of Jews go on Yom Kippur and they
The
go
high
on,
holidays after
right,
stuff.
the high holidays. So if you weren't a member, you had to buy tickets for the high holidays, which I found, like, what? I mean, like,
Astronomical.
all of these things I'm finding out going, I never knew this. But it was the last day that I was there. I was sitting in temple for Yom Kippur services. My mom had an emergency, she had a blood vessel that had busted in
Oh
the back of
God.
her neck. And so she was in the hospital. She had just had emergency surgery. So she wasn't coming with me. I'd gotten her a ticket. My son was maybe 6 or 7 at the time, and I didn't wanna drag him into services for, all day. Um, the Friday night stuff a lot of times was usually in Hebrew. As growing up, the same thing, you learn how to read it for your bat mitzvah, and you learn certain things, but I never walked away feeling spiritually fulfilled or feeling like there was anything that I took away other than the obligation of having to
You
be
bat
there.
mitzvah?
I was bat mitzvah.
I never was.
And of
I don't know
course,
why.
like most people, after my bat mitzvah, my parents were kind of done. So when I joined the temple, my mom joined the temple. When I left the temple, my mom left the temple. So the interesting thing is when I went there on Yom Kippur after being there for 2 years, I sat by myself in a room full of probably 3,000 people because they extend the hallway out.
Mhm.
No one said hello to me. No one greeted me when I walked in. People would make eye contact and just look. I mean, I had never felt so alone in my life. And
In a
I
room full
thought,
of people.
if I'm sitting in a sanctuary and I can't feel the presence of God on the highest holiday of the year, what am I doing here? What is my purpose for being here? And I had somebody recommend. I'd been taking my son to a therapist at the time because he had pretty off the chart ADHD. So we were working with that and kind of figuring out how that looked for him. And I kind of told her what had happened with Temple, and she said, "Have you ever tried UU?" Like, what is UU? She said it's called Unitarian Universalism. I was like, that is a mouthful. She said, in a nutshell, it's a combination of everything. It's where
Understand
people
that.
it it's everything. I mean, people that were there with a Buddhist background, with a Christian
Yeah,
background, with an
yeah.
agnostic background. It's just
Like Baha'i is kind of like that. The
it was
page.
yeah, I mean, the problem is there was just a little too much um grassroots sort of like politics being I felt kind of being pumped into it. One of the sermons that was done while we were there had to do with, they were talking about like how, these migrant farmers in Homestead parts of Florida that aren't, that are losing wages and aren't making anything, and now Publix wants to raise the tomato cost by 3 cents and boycott this. And I said, oh, again, I'm not here for this either.
Right,
We got a little bit of all religions, which was great. I think it was good for my son. He learned about Jesus. He learned about, Muhammad. He learned about Buddha and Buddhism, but it still wasn't fulfilling what I needed. And when I met my husband, he was not going to a church at the time. So we ended up getting married at the UU church,
hmm,
which was great. I mean, it was fine. He had no problem with that. We wrote our own vows. Everything was, the way we wanted it to be. But that kind of ended up fizzling out for me too. And so he said, "Well, why don't we go over to my mom's church?" My mom goes to church up in Sunrise. She's been going up there for years. So we started going up to his mom's church, my mother-in-law's church. And I was pleasantly surprised when I met my husband how much he knew about Judaism. But I was even more surprised, pleasantly surprised, about how much the church we were going to references the Old Testament as well. It wasn't like just all about New Testament. It wasn't, it was all encompassing. They referenced Old Testament stories. They referenced Old Testament prophecy, which is actually what spurred me on, because my favorite book of the Bible is the book of Isaiah, because there's so much prophetic value about Jesus in that book, that I started looking into the history. And back in the 17th century, one of my tattoo is Isaiah 53. And Isaiah 53 is basically talking
what's
about
that
how
one? I don't, not familiar.
right. Well, that's what I'm going to explain. It's
Yeah.
basically the prophecy of Jesus and how he was beaten for our iniquities, he was chastised for our sins, and by his stripes we are healed. And so chapter and verse Isaiah 53 is literally talking about Jesus, but you will not find it in the Torah. You will not find it in a lot of places because in the 17th century, from what I read, some Spanish rabbis in Spain decided that that was too confusing for their congregation and decided to leave it out. So you don't really ever hear about the book of Isaiah being taught at temple at all,
Mm.
which is interesting when you know the how much of the story of Jesus is in that particular book. So that just got me deep diving. And then I read a book by a gentleman by the name of Stan Telkin called Betrayed. And Betrayed was really kind of the icing on the cake for me. It was about an Orthodox Jew and his wife, and they were raised in New York in a very Orthodox home. And his daughter came to him and said that she had decided to accept Christ as her Lord and Savior.
Mhm.
And he was completely just taken aback. And where did this come from? And who brainwashed you? And so he took the approach that he was going to study the New Testament inside and out and just go back and study the Bible so that he could show his daughter all the loopholes in every place that just showed her where Jesus is not the Messiah. He's not the this, he's not the that. And
Mhm.
in his studies, he ended up becoming a believer,
Huh.
becoming an outspoken
How
believer.
ironic.
And his reason being is I realized that a lot of the stuff that I learned was never taught to me as a Jew. A lot of the stuff that's in the New Testament, which you don't ever hear about in a temple.
It's like, "Oh, Yeshua Shmua,"
Exactly.
right?
And so I was really intrigued by what I learned, and I thought, "Well, God, if this was left out, what else have I missed?" And that just really started my deep dive, and it was a year into our relationship and going there that I finally said, "You know, I'm gonna do this." And I
You have this
I
thirst for knowledge. You have
hand
this.
God, let me
Yeah.
tell you, it has been I'm just sorry I didn't do it sooner. I really am, because for me personally, and I always tell people, "Look, I will never push Jesus or God down your throat. I had it done to
Like
me.
that.
It's obnoxious. I don't feel I always tell people, "Look,
Yeah.
I don't get brownie points for
I don't like,
recruiting."
proselytizing.
Exactly.
Don't.
All I can tell you is from my personal experience, it's an absolute game changer, and I would not have gotten through the things I have been getting through over the last 4 or 5 years with my own family. My husband had a motorcycle accident last year, almost a year to the day, February, where he almost died. And it's the only thing that's gotten me through is my faith and holding on to God and God bringing him back. And God has, like I said, when we started talking, I can now look back and see all the times that God has intervened in my life where long before I knew him or accepted, Jesus. And so it's kind of filled in the whole picture for me. It's kind of painted the whole picture so I can see the landscape now. And I can see how I was hanging on to things that are so irrelevant and so unimportant in the big picture.
That's
And
life.
exactly,
That's life. I
exactly.
mean, there's
Worrying about what people think or worrying
the
ab
I mean, I honestly, I will say, I'm very Jewish,
Mhm.
unapologetically,
Uh-huh.
very Zionist,
Mhm.
unapologetically. Um, I wasn't always even into my Judaism. And so I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person.
Mhm.
And I believe, to me personally, for me, that
Mhm.
God is the universe. It's in everything.
Mhm.
It's just absolutely a supreme being, not necessarily male or female.
Mhm.
That this is just my take on God. That it's a karma thing. I'm
Mhm.
almost I probably am more of a Buddhist than
Okay.
than that, I just believe in karma, and I just believe that if you do bad shit, you're gonna get bad shit back, and everything is a full circle.
Mhm.
And that's, yeah, I was married to a man who's from the Christian faith, but
Okay.
he was, beating the
Right.
shit out of me.
Well, yeah,
So
that's the other thing too. You can call yourself a carp, but, that doesn't mean that you're gonna that's I think the biggest problem these days with when we talk religion is that I don't call myself religious. I don't call myself spiritual. What I consider is I have a personal relationship with my Lord and Savior. I have a personal relationship with my creator. I have been given the freedom since making that decision to let go of a lot of the things that I think were controlling me, and that I felt the need to control myself. For me, it's been a real sense of freedom, but also a sense of knowing that I am I am covered. I am like I'm not alone in whatever situation I've been in, whatever
right,
hardships I've come across,
there's
whatever darkness. It's yeah, he's there, he's walking
someone's
with me, and that's
walking next to you and carrying you.
I tell people all the time, look, I'm a different type of Christian. I'm a different type of believer. I think that everybody needs to find the walk that works for them. Um I know for me personally, getting saved and becoming a follower of Christ has been an absolute game changer for me.
Like, you don't think that people are gonna go to hell if they don't. Yeah.
Here's what I think.
I mean,
I
is that
I
okay? I'll just say this. I read this lady that I used to work with who does these Facebook posts all the time, is very Christian. And
Mhm,
she put a post like, if you're not a bigot if you think that fornication is wrong, you're not a bigot if you think prostitution is wrong, you're not a bigot if you think homosexuality is bad and against the Bible. Just like this post, and I
mhm.
read it and I was like, I honestly said, "Who the hell are you? Are you the judge and jury? You're
Well,
just
here's
you're."
the funniest thing about that.
I
Um,
wanted to say, "Well, you're a bigot because you're
if
you're you're a bigot because you're telling it. You're just
right,
preaching. You
right.
want to be a preacher."
And you know what I would say to people like that? The Bible tells you very clearly, and I don't know chapter and verse. I can't tell you this is the passage from this, but I can tell you what's in the Bible. And the Bible talks about taking the log out of your own eye before you judge your neighbor. And there's a lot of that in the New Testament. And so what I always like to tell people is if your Jesus tells you that it's okay to judge people, because you're a Christian, then you're not following the same Jesus that I'm following. Because my Jesus tells me I don't need to worry about judging anyone else or what they think. That's between them and God. And so I'm a very firm believer that I will defend what I believe and what in my heart um is the right thing to do. But a lot of people will try to throw these questions at me or talk to me about oh, so do you think this and do you think and my answer is the same thing. I know as much as anybody else does. Maybe more, maybe less sometimes, but I don't know everything.
I
I
mean,
don't know what
I
happened.
have people who, it's in a lot of the Jewish community too.
Well, it
That,
is. It's very
um,
much so.
it's a lot in the Jewish community that, if you're just judgment in general of
Mhm.
people. And um I found personally, I tried to be like, the organization Hadassah, are you
Mhm.
familiar with them?
Yes.
I tried
Mhm.
to be, around women who were they would do like, fundraising. They do a lot of fundraising, but they had like very high powered careers, or they had, a college education, And so I felt very looked down on
Right, right,
because I have a job. So what? So I have a job. At least I have a job and I'm working and I'm not living off the government.
right,
So, or the society. I'm not sucking the money out of society.
right.
And so, I felt like what's so wrong that I just have a regular job, that it's not some high-powered career or that I didn't go to a university. I went to the School of Hard Knocks.
Well,
But it's
that's very true, but again, and there's no way that we could even cover this tonight, but there are a few things I always like to leave people with that I feel that Jesus has put on my heart when it comes to stuff like that. And one of them is to remind people, whether they're Jewish or whether they're agnostic or, whatever their belief system is, I believe if they're asking me, it's either because they're truly genuinely interested or because they're trying to catch me and find a way to throw off my whatever I said. But the night before the crucifixion was actually a Yom Kippur. It was Friday night Shabbat dinner. And the first thing that Jesus did when his disciples came was he got down on his knees and he washed their feet. And one of his disciples said, "Oh, Lord, Lord, you can't wash my feet." And he said, "I absolutely need to wash your feet because the Son of Man has come here to serve." And Jesus has never put himself on a pedestal. Jesus has never judged people. Jesus has never said, you shouldn't like this one, or you need to have this amount of money. Jesus hung out with criminals and tax
or
payers.
that you're gonna, like, well, first of all, he didn't make a religion out of himself. I
No, that came later, but
Right.
Jesus
I
came, and
But he
it's and
didn't
it's also said in the
tell
Bible that
people you're, gonna be in a hellfire.
no. Jesus came, and it says in the Bible that Jesus clearly stated, "I came for the Jew first and then the Gentile." Jesus was never, like you said, he was never here to create a new religion. He was here to
He was teaching a lot of Judaism.
Well, that's what he was doing, but he was also martyring himself as the last blood sacrifice. Because up until then, people used to bring sheep and rams and goats and whatever the temple elders told them to bring to sacrifice at the altar. I come from a family where the knowledge of Judaism, I find out much later, has really been skewed. I mean, my mom says, Jews don't believe in heaven and hell.
Right.
Jews don't believe in Satan. Well, the book of Job is all about Satan and God talking about Job. So I said, it's very interesting to me how many Jews don't even know what's in their own religion.
I
That's the
don't,
Bible.
honestly, I don't.
And
I
that's
haven't
what
read
I
the
always tell
Torah.
people. Look
I
for
haven't read the New Testament or the Old Testament from cover to cover.
And that's why my best answer to people is, if you really are interested, if you really want to know, if you're hungry to find out, look into it yourself. Study it at your own pace. Answer questions in the Bible. Everything that you would ask, that you would throw at somebody. Well, if you believe this, then how is this? Da, da, da. The answers are all there. And at the end of the day, I'll say the same thing that my pastors at the church I go to say. We don't have all the answers. That's why it's faith. People say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. Well, of course you'll believe it when you see it,
Blind faith.
but you have to have faith in what, my mom used to like to pick and choose certain miracles. Like, okay, well, so fine, the angel of death came through and smote all of the firstborn, but as long as the Jews had the blood on their doorpost, they were, but I don't believe that Moses parted the Red Sea. It
The
was probably
story of
low tide.
Passover.
So you have an
A
option.
lot of it is allegory,
You can
in
either
my
believe
opinion.
what you read or
Yeah.
not believe it. I'm not here to tell you.
I mean, I have a hard time, for instance, that Sarah, was pregnant at 90, or that someone, lived until they were 400 years old.
Right, but
Listen,
back in the day,
yeah,
that is supposedly what had happened, and,
yeah.
you know, there are
There was
certain
one. They were miracles. Okay, they were
yeah,
miracles.
there were miracles, but there are certain Christians that believe that ever since Jesus was, crucified and resurrected, that those kind of miracles don't exist anymore. But you know what they do? And you can look them up. And now it's even easier with social media because you can find stories, real stories on people that were dead for half an hour with a toe tag in a morgue and came back. You can find doctors going, we couldn't in a million years tell you why this person's alive or why their tumor's gone when it shouldn't be. There are lots of miracles, but we don't choose to see them as miracles anymore. We just choose to see them, and they're not talked about as much as all the crappy bad stuff is.
I assume a lot of this is in your book.
Mhm.
And
Is.
the name of your book again?
My book is called Life After the Party. I don't know if you can see it where
I can see it a little bit.
and, it's basically, it's a true story about receiving beauty for ashes. And, it's pretty much all in there. There's a little of it's sugar coated. Some of it is not addressed because for legalities, for reasons of
Yeah,
legalities, not mentioning certain people. Everybody in there, whether they were good friends and they didn't care, or whether they would have cared, everybody's name's been changed. So nobody's name in there is their original name
yeah.
from my actual life. So, I reference a lot of, I do reference a lot of the people that I did hang out with as far as, rock stars and people
Yeah.
like that. But some of it is still, you know, just kind of the icing on the cake.
Well, you've just been wonderful.
Thank you.
Is so interesting, your story, and the, you're a survivor of a lot of things and an inspiration to people that, what I don't know how to put it, that really, that want to um feel closer to God. You can always do that in your own way.
Sure.
Doesn't have to be through, I don't, we do say Jews don't really we don't recruit.
Right. And to
I
tell you
don't,
the
I don't, I
truth,
don't go to temple. I don't
the
go to
good church doesn't really need to recruit either. If you're
right.
if you're if you're speaking into people's lives and people are getting spiritually filled, you don't need to toot your own horn. You really don't.
Yeah. I mean, I was having a conversation with my mom the other day, and I said, that you really don't need to be in a temple or, if you get on your knees to pray at night,
Mhm.
whatever you're praying for, that that's your relationship. That's your
Mhm.
relationship with your higher powers. And as long as you have some higher power that you can find a connection with and put that in your heart. And so you've really given a whole new perspective on, a lot of people don't know a lot of things about messianic. I guess you're a messianic Jew.
Mhm.
Okay. So, or Jews for Jesus, it's very similar, I suppose. So,
For some reason, and maybe it's just my age, but every time I hear the term Jews for Jesus, I kind of think of like the guys handing out the flowers at the airport too,
yeah,
like it's
but
it's gotten a bad
I've
rap,
never
but
seen
yeah.
that. But is that what they do?
Not the Jews for Jesus, but
Oh, like
the
Hare
yeah,
Krishnas?
Hare
Mm,
Krishnas, yeah,
yeah.
For some reason, Jews for Jesus, that always gives me that mental
No,
image.
no, a messianic, I'll just say messianic.
Yeah.
That a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people don't really know, a lot of people who grew up in a Christian faith don't really know about Judaism, and
Sure.
the roots, and the 2 being so similar, and really, you know,
Sure.
and about respecting your roots, where you come from, and the other side of it.
Very
And
true.
it's very brave of you to come on and to talk about. So I think it's very brave, and you've just been, so full of so much information, but it's was my pleasure to have you.
I appreciate that. It was fun.
Yeah, your
I
book
love
is
anything
Life
that can help
After
people.
the Party.
Life after the party.
I'm gonna have
A
to read
true
it.
story about receiving beauty for ashes.
On Kindle.
On Kindle, yep, it's available in paperback on Amazon and on Kindle on Amazon.
Wonderful. So, I mean, we could talk for hours
I
probably,
know.
but
Right.
I'm gonna 2 hours, I'm gonna let you go because you probably
Thank you.
I don't know, go rest soon. And so thank you so much. You're just a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate it. And if anything that I
you for
share
your
can help
time.
anybody,
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing
anytime.
yourself
Anytime.
with my audience. And I think that there will be a lot of people who connect with what you're saying. And just I hope that you don't consider, this whole thing about strippers and being broken and damaged, and also just sinners who need saving, and
Yep.
all that. You're not.
We all need saving. Every single one of us.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I maybe not in a Christian way, but I feel like God has saved me several times from death. And so, you know, um, now I feel like there's a purpose to my life.
That's it. That's
That's
it.
all.
You know, the last thought I'd like to leave you with is the easiest thing to do is to follow Jesus because he had 2 commandments, and that was love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And those are the 2 commandments out of the New Testament that are easy to follow if you just think the same thoughts. I love my God. I love my neighbor. I love my neighbor in a godly way. I don't necessarily like my neighbor all the
I
time.
have fights with my neighbor over a tree that she won't cut
Oh
down.
boy.
It's
Yeah,
it's it's that's a whole nother episode.
exactly.
But
It's not always easy to love your
thank
neighbor, but you
thank
know
you for
what?
sharing yourself with me.
Thank you.
By and keep in contact. Definitely stay in touch. I'm gonna read your book. I
Thank you. Let me know what you think.
I will. I might just send you my book just to read
Okay.
that as it is currently,
Sure.
current state. It probably needs a lot of editing. I think I sent it to John, but he didn't say anything. And there's a lot of cursing, and it's not it's different. It's not a warm fuzzy read.
Right.
Maybe I'll send you a couple chapters of or the Joe Stripper.
Okay.
So
I would love that.
yeah, yeah. I'll email you. Maybe I'll email you like my have a chapter about my love and hate relationship with God.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to read it.
And thank you again. And yeah, definitely stay in contact.
I will. I will.
Thank you.
Take care.
You
Have a great
too.
night.
You too. Good night.